Let's talk about sales. It's a word that for a lot of us can feel, well, a little weird. We all love to buy things, but we absolutely hate the feeling of being sold to. Today, we're going to dig into exactly why that is and how we can completely flip our thinking on selling, all based on some incredible insights from a panel of top entrepreneurs. This quote right here, it just nails it, doesn't it? There's a real thrill when you buy something you want, but the second you feel that sales pitch coming, a defensive wall just shoots right up. So what is actually going on inside our heads in that moment? You've got to wonder, right? Why do we have this gut-level, automatic negative reaction to the whole process? Well, it turns out it's not just because of a few bad run-ins with pushy salespeople. Nope. The answer is actually hardwired deep, deep inside our brains. To figure out how to sell better, we first have to get our heads around why people instinctively put their guard up. And it all starts in a very, very primal part of our mind. This is what the experts call the energy sucker effect, and it's fascinating. On a primal subconscious level, our brain sees a salesperson as a potential threat, someone who's there to take our resources, our energy, our money. It's this protective instinct that just kicks in before we even have a chance to think about it. And here is where it gets really wild. Our brains are still running on software that was basically designed for a world of scarcity. A time when you had to guard every single thing you had. But today, we live in this world of insane abundance, and yet that old programming is still running in the background, telling us to be suspicious of anyone trying to get us to part with what we've got. One of the experts told this great story. When he was a kid, his dad was approached by a street vendor selling gold. The vendor kept calling it a marvelous opportunity, and his father's response was just perfect. If it's such a marvelous opportunity, then you should keep it for yourself. That just sums up our natural skepticism, doesn't it? So this deep inherent distrust of being sold to leads a lot of entrepreneurs and creators to hold on to a very comforting, but ultimately very dangerous myth. And here's the myth. A good product sells itself. I mean, it's a nice idea and it feels like it should be true, but in reality, it's just an excuse to dodge the hard work of actually selling. When you put all that responsibility on the product, you're leaving a massive amount of money on the table. Believing this myth creates something called inattentional blindness. You get so focused on the sales you are making that you become totally blind to all the ones you're missing. It's like you're only counting the fish that just so happen to jump into your boat without realizing you could be using a net to catch so many more. Okay, so if we can't just rely on a great product to do all the work, what's the alternative? Well, it's not about being a natural salesperson or having some magical charisma. It's about building a solid, learnable foundation. This is a huge mythbuster right here. Great salespeople aren't born, they are built. And according to the experts, they're built on a solid foundation of 3 essential pillars. And here they are: ambition, technique, and resilience. You can think of them as the 3 legs of a stool. If any one of them is missing or even just a little weak, the whole thing just falls right over. Let's just quickly touch on these. Ambition is that deep hunger, your why, that makes the pain of rejection feel a little less sharp. Technique is the nuts and bolts, the playbook, the repeatable process. This stuff can be learned. And resilience, that's all about emotional management. It's the ability to hear no again and again and again and not let it completely derail you. So, once you have that foundation set, what's the very first practical skill you need to master? Well, it all comes down to one simple but incredibly powerful change in the way you communicate. The amateur salesperson, they walk into a room and just make statements. They talk at you, they pitch, they list off features. They're just pushing information out into the world. But the professional? Totally different ballgame. The professional asks questions. They pull information in. They understand that selling isn't about giving a speech. It's about starting a conversation to find out what the other person actually needs and wants. So why do questions work so well? Because they take the customer on a journey of their own discovery. First, your questions help them realize they even have a problem. Then they start to see the real consequences of that problem. After that, they learn that a solution actually exists, and only then, at the very end of that journey, are they finally ready to hear about your solution. At the end of the day, your questions are really trying to uncover one of two things. See, people buy for two main reasons. They're either running away from something they fear, like instability, or they're running towards something they want, like freedom or status. A great salesperson knows how to ask the right questions to figure out which one it is. And that brings us to our final and maybe most important idea of all. It's a mindset shift that can totally change how you approach the entire concept of sales. I absolutely love this way of thinking about it. A salesperson is an athlete. It just makes so much sense. Athletes succeed through constant practice, repetition, coaching, and managing their emotions when the pressure's on. Sales is exactly the same. It is a performance discipline. I mean, think about it. You can't learn to swim just by reading a book, right? And you can't truly learn to sell from a course or workshop either. You have to be willing to actually jump in the water, to fail, to get rejected, and to learn from the direct experience of just doing it. So if selling is like a sport, how do you actually train for it? How do you practice and get to the top of your game? This quote really says it all. Training doesn't sell, selling trains. You know, all the books and workshops in the world are helpful, but they can't teach you what you'll learn from actually being in a sales conversation. The act of selling is the training itself. So the real shift is to see every single sales interaction not as a final performance, but as a practice session. Every no isn't a failure, it's just a rep in the gym. So the next time you're in a sales conversation, instead of just trying to get to yes, try asking yourself this: what can I learn from this?